Morning everyone, well it's Roz here from Brumby Horse Life, and this video is going to be a little bit more about training Billy. We had our ups and downs today. Sometimes he was really good and sometimes he just didn't want to know. I suspect it's the weather, and I also suspect he might have had something going on with his mouth. Anyway, as you can see, he was in good spirits and we still had a fair bit of fun with each other. So at the moment, all I can really do with Bill is groundwork, because I have to get a Sir single for my stock saddle, because that saddle's just not staying into place and it's dangerous to ride him without one. I'm also considering swapping over to my all-purpose saddle, and I need to get a girth for that as well. So there's a couple of reasons as to why I haven't got it back up on his back, but in the meantime I'm just reinforcing my commands with him on the ground, and just trying to cement just my verbal commands, hand directions, but more so everything is to do with my verbal commands, because I work on the theory that if I can't use my legs properly for whatever reason, then Bill will respond to my verbal commands. We all have our own patterns of behaviour with our horses, but I always start with Bill giving him a grooming session, just connecting. It's important because he is a wild brumby, who's been domesticated. Every time we meet, there's got to be some form of "Hi, how are you?" type greeting, and let's commune. So I use grooming as a let's commune, and then we go through to the next stage. But it's called horse etiquette manners, and for him it's a big deal. Bella couldn't give a rat's ass about whether I groomed her or not, but for Billy it is. And with brumbies in particular, if you can brush them all over, it's a sign of trust between the two of you. Letting them, with brumbies, it's a big deal for you to touch their bodies and all parts of their bodies. And it takes a lot of, bond and trust building, and you being sensitive to your horse. So, it took a while for me to be able to casually groom Bill from head to toe, because he had to trust me with his body. And there's still times where he's not 100% sure, but he doesn't move away from me anymore, and he's always happy to stand there of his own free will and volition to be groomed. It was another windy and overcast and very cold afternoon yesterday, so it wasn't ideal weather for training, but you've got to get used to riding your horse or training your horse in all sorts of weather conditions. And so I dragged myself out of the warm house and into the cold yesterday and tried to do a little bit. And look, we succeeded in part, so I'm not complaining. Because Bill's a cookie monster, and he's also had 2 bouts of choke by eating too fast, and all this stems back to his starvation days and his fear of missing out. When I give him treats, I always step back away from him and make sure that he's chewed whatever he's had before he'll get the next piece. And I've learned to do that with him, because if I don't, even if he's swinging his head round and trying to beg, and he'll try and beg even when he's still got a piece of carrot or, in this case, a little piece of apple in his mouth, just from fear. Everything with Bill is fear and anxiety that he's going to miss out. For a few minutes, it was really cold before. Bill doesn't want her around, so he's going to nip her. Come on, Suki Lala. So I started out, as usual, off lead, trying to get Bill to do a bit of groundwork. Initially, he was, yeah, look, I'll do it with you. And because Bella was just hanging around on the outside and she wasn't having to do anything, he quickly soured. But anyway, we made a fairly good start. Also, I want to point out, I've never actually ground tied Bill, but he will stand for me anywhere. So it doesn't matter whether it's around in the stable yard, out in the paddock, in the round pen. If I ask him to stand somewhere, regardless of whether I've got a halter or not, he will stay put. It's just something that I have taught him since he was young, to stand still for me, without any sort of pressure. So you'll see that in just about every video. Wherever I place him, he'll just stand happily. And I'm fortunate that way, I think, with him. So, in terms of training Bill and asking him to do everything, it's a partnership. Like I said before, grooming is let's be friends, let's communicate with each other, before I ask him to participate with me. It's all about continuing that connection. He feels like, I've attended to his needs, and then I feel like he's obligated then. I know that sounds funny, but there's a lot of unspoken concepts that we have over each other. I provide the food and the love and the attention, and he does what I ask him to do because he has that love and connection back with me. So the reason I ask Bill to turn in circles, and I sometimes I do it fast, sometimes I do it slow, it's to teach him to move his feet, to cross over his feet, to give under pressure, and to bend him and soften him up. So there's a few reasons for doing this. Unfortunately, I don't need to do it with a halter.
Hook
I mean,
on.
sometimes I do. Most of the time that I don't. And then to add
Remember.
little commands in. At the end, I asked him to back up, and he wasn't initially willing. And so I
Halt.
had to gently touch him with my
Halt.
hand and give the
Good boy.
command
He
to
wants my
back,
stick.
and which he did, and I
He's
rewarded him
after the
straight
stick. Hook
away.
on.
So, as you've probably realised at this point, every task that I've given
Good
Bill at
boy.
the moment is all off lead,
Good
and
boy.
it's simply using my verbal commands, praise
Step.
and reward,
Step.
and my hand
Step.
signals. And
Good
at this
boy.
point, he's focused and wanting to
Halt.
participate.
Oh, good boy. He's feeling a bit lazy. Fatty girl's there watching on with interest. She's the keen observer, not that she likes to do anything much. Come on, fatty boy. I could actually close it in and give him a bit of a working out because he does actually need it. I might just do that. So these basic exercises that I'm doing with him at the moment is to teach him to have awareness of his feet, lifting them up. So I tell him each time we go over an obstacle, step, step. And this is important because if you're training your horse and you want them to get on or off, it's a really good and easy way just to say a verbal word to them that they understand, which means they have to lift their feet, or there's some sort of obstacle coming that they need to lift their feet on. So it's in this basic groundwork where you can reinforce really important handling issues like getting a horse on and off a trailer, or getting them through an obstacle when they're frightened. and they're learning to build their trust in you and relying on you to tell them where they need to move their feet. Again, that small circle work is just to remind him of where he's putting his feet and to teach him to cross his legs over and do it comfortably. I like to work in small spaces and to get him to learn to manoeuvre his body around small spaces, whether it be going around the drum, going around, turning on the spot in a tight circle. It's all about him having control of his body and having an awareness that he can get himself out of a tight situation without panicking. And all of these little steps will go towards when I do start to ride him out and about. If we're in a predicament or in a tight situation, he knows how to use his body then and what to do, whether it's to sidestep, to turn on the spot, to lift his feet up, all simple things. And also for me, it's teaching him to bend through his body. I didn't do any neck bending in this particular session. I don't tend to overwhelm him with too much information because he needs to process whatever it is that I'm teaching him for the day. So for whatever reason, Bill's always a bit resistant to step back. And so I don't, make it a big deal issue, but I do ask him, and I'm back to now using a little bit of hand pressure and verbal commands to back because, look, sometimes you do have to go back to your very basic sort of commands and reinforce them if the horse is resistant without making a big deal of it, might I add. Another big issue I really want to impress, especially if you're new to ground training and you're new to really learning how to train your horses up, is all about lead. One of the reasons I don't use the lead very much is that I rely, as I've said before, on my trust and my relationship building. I rely on verbal commands, I rely on hand signals. So when I do actually have a hold of that lead, I am never generating any sort of anxiety energy up to Bill's face. And I don't think a lot of people realise that if you've got that horse held under its chin, you're trying to control its head all the time, that just creates anxiety in a horse. You need to be able to walk your horse on a loose lead and have it follow along with you comfortably and not be generating whatever nerves and anxieties you have inside of you. Making the horse feel uptight. So that's a key point in handling your horse, just in everyday work actually, whether it be walking it around the yard, tying it up, just taking it somewhere for a walk. You need to be able to do all of that on a nice, relaxed, loose lead. So again, you can see there's no ground tying or anything with Bill. I could just drop him off at any point and he will stay put on the command of halt or stop. And he's quite happy to stand there without me ever tying him. I think it's the rare occasion that I ever actually tie Bill up to anything. Often I just throw the lead rope over somewhere just to keep it off his feet. And it just makes it easier for me, and there's no pressure on him. He doesn't have to feel claustrophobic either. So with brumbies, as you can probably realise, if they've come in from the wild, having halters on them, having leads on them, being put into small areas can all be very frightening and create a lot of anxiety, which means that they won't
What's
get
the
away
matter?
from you. So
Do you have
my
problems
intent with Bill
today?
from the beginning was to teach him that none of these tools were permanent items on him and that he could stay or he could go, and that was his free choice. And so what he learned from me was that if he stayed around, there was some positive things that happened for him. And he actually enjoys the training process. When he's had enough, he makes it quite clear to me as well. But there's just little things that we've done over a period of time that has built up that communication process. So, with brumbies, I think that's particularly important because unlike domestic horses who quite often have a halter or
be tied up from the time they're little. It's all new for brumbies and it's all unnatural for them. Well, I hope I've imparted a little bit of knowledge for those who are just starting out and for those who've got a brumby and they're still trying to figure it all out. Anyway, if you like our channel, please hit the subscribe button and thanks for watching.